Tangled Up in Blue, mystical allegory of the soul in flight. For a long time I've been intending to write a piece on Dylan that would reflect a passion for his words and music that has now lasted for nearly 40 years. The problem is where to start. Dylan has produced so much material of the highest quality that it would be easy to write something that quickly degenerated into a meaningless survey of high points. Hoping to avoid this approach, I have decided to concentrate on a song that has meant so much to me personally over a period of nearly 50 years. That is the song Tangled Up in Blue from Blood on the Tracks. This wonderful song is the opening track on Dylan's 1974 album Blood on the Tracks, which comprises a series of songs about emotional loss that Dylan wrote as his marriage to Sarah Lowndes was breaking up. Another influence, they say, was the art class of Norman Rubin that Dylan was attending in New York around the time when he wrote the song. Specifically, Dylan says that Rubin's work suggested to him how he might go about writing a non-linear narrative. In fact, all of the lyrics of the song, as we shall see, seem to come from one point of view, which is not the case with some of Dylan's later workings of the piece, though there are certainly a number of non-linear and oblique shifts in emphasis. Perhaps most tellingly, Dylan has said that with Blood on the Tracks he began to do consciously what he had previously only been able to do unconsciously. With this short preamble now finished, let's get quickly into the situational context of the song. As we would expect from a great Dylan song, the initial mood is ambiguous, and in this case just a little wistful. Early one morning, the sun was shining. I was laying in bed, wondering if she'd changed at all, if her hair was still red. Her folks had said our lives together sure was going to be rough. They never did like Mama's homemade dress. Papa's bank book wasn't big enough, and I was standing on the side of the road, rain falling on my shoes, heading out for the East Coast. Lord knows I've paid some dues getting through, tangled up in blue. Here then the artist appears alone and regretful in his bed, thinking about whether someone unknown to listeners, but obviously very close to him, has changed at all. This is followed by some flashbacks to the difficult life the artist and the absent woman shared together, after which there is a rather abrupt jump to a new scene, where the writer or narrator is standing on the side of the road. This is where the non-linear narrative idea comes in. The images are jumping around everywhere, yet the main idea of looking back with regret on a relationship that is now over seems clear enough. It is necessary to emphasize that Dylan is a hybrid artist and that his art brings together words, music, and performance. He is not a poet, and he is certainly more than a songwriter. Do categories matter so much? He is a modern troubadour, and his spell is cast over us at its intense best when all three strands of his art are working seamlessly together. But is this poetry alone? Are these words poetry? Perhaps, but they are not great poetry. It is when the hybrid threesome comes movingly together, as is the case in this great song, that we might swear Dylan to be the artistic equal of Eliot or Stravinsky. The striking last line brings us face to face with the central image of loss and sums up all the rest, tangled up in blue. The song continues with flashbacks about how the pair broke up. After parting ways with his lover, the poet, artist, songwriter is seen drifting around aimlessly, consumed by his loss. He perceives images of the lost lover wherever he goes. Even a probable hooker in a topless place can bring back visions of his beloved. There is an idea of the eternal feminine here, and also of the expectant and gullible male and female, always ready to repeat the inevitable and destructive cycle of the past, which is nevertheless necessary for spiritual growth. Dylan, or the protagonist, seems to have lost more than just a relationship. It appears that this special rapport is somehow representative of everything worthwhile in his life, and with its crumbling, all things have disappeared into a black hole of meaninglessness. Now all the artist can do is drift around from place to place, taking menial jobs that mean nothing to him. We are told in a later reworking of the song that he nearly drowned in Delacroix, but learned nothing of the circumstances that led to the crisis. Perhaps they are unimportant. The essential point is that everything has lost its meaning to him, so that even if he had drowned, it wouldn't really have made a lot of difference. One way a poem or text can take on new power is by making use of subtle emotional archetypes that everyone in a particular culture, in a Jungian sense, might share. In this song, Dylan brings in a number of Christian images that would undoubtedly reverberate with his listeners, even if they did not consciously recognize them. The artist's lover in the song is poor and drifting, yet people such as the enigmatic hooker are struck by the power of his silence and his infinite capacity to suffer. When they are able to see beyond the simple man to the pain and inner strength that lie beneath, they are shocked. The protagonist himself is a little surprised at his own inner power when the hooker bends down to tie the laces of his shoe. Through the intensity of his suffering, the artist becomes a Christ-like figure that commands respect and even love from those who, through emotional awareness rather than innate virtue, are able to see beyond the depths of his pain into the secret heart of the artist's infinite compassion. The image of the eternal feminine is important, as the hooker seems to change chameleon-like into someone with a greater depth of intellectual understanding. What hooker would be likely to have a book of poems from the 13th century, especially one by an Italian poet? When the book of poems is passed silently to the protagonist, an epiphany takes place. Both the eternal woman and the artist realize the profundity of their own emotional power, and how this power, insight, can only reach its full potential in combination with each other. Could the poet be Dante, who through the portrayal of his beloved Beatrice made a guardian angel out of a simple Florentine girl? Dante would be a poet from the 14th century, but probably Dylan was not much interested in such a trivial detail. The biggest shift in the song takes place when the protagonist suddenly is living with them, though who them refers to is not really made clear, in Montague Street. It seems yet another woman is present, but somehow she is the same one as before, the eternal feminine. This time, it is as if Dylan is an observer of another relationship that is going wrong, while the man starts dealing with slaves and the woman froze up inside. The observer is implicated in the story of yet another failed relationship, and he has to keep on keeping on so he can communicate his oblique and difficult truths to the world. Perhaps it is not a coincidence that the protagonist continues his journey like a bird that flew. In mystical Sufi writings, the wandering bird was seen as an image for the human soul in search of God, and the connection would seem to be an appropriate one here. Religious overtones are there in Dylan from the very beginning. I believe the last stanza of the song should be viewed in metaphorical, allegorical terms. The artist is going back again because he has to get to her somehow. Get to whom, we might ask? Is it the red-haired beauty of the first lines? Or more importantly, could it be the hooker? Or is it possible that the artist is referring to the woman who froze up inside? In fact, like the travelling bird who in Sufi allegory continually searches for God, the artist must keep looking for those examples of perfect feminine beauty that take him beyond the mundane and workaday world of illusion and into the presence of God. For Dylan, The world of the heart and of the mind is a real world. What we usually call reality is a mere fabrication. Therefore, it is a primary job of the artist to inhabit this world and communicate its arcane truths to the less perceptive among us. However, this can also be dangerous and emotionally draining. As the great man himself once said, being noticed can be a burden. Jesus got himself crucified because he got himself noticed. So I disappear a lot.